born, video 6. Okay, the Earth is spinning about 1,000 miles an hour at the equator, but the Earth is slowing down. The Earth slows down enough that every once in a while they have to add a tick to the clock to put the clocks back on schedule. New Year's Eve, 1990, they said we have to add a tick to the clock because the clocks are off by a second because the Earth is slowing down. They said the Earth slows down 1,000th of a second every day. 1992, they did it again. Astronomy magazine said Earth's rotation is slowing down. June is going to be 1 second longer than normal. We're going to have a leap second. Now, most people have heard of leap year, but many people have never even heard of leap second, even though we have one every year to year and a half. We have to have a leap second because the Earth is slowing down and you're putting the clocks back on schedule. Now, kids, this is going to be complicated, so listen carefully. The Earth is spinning, but it is slowing down. How many can figure this out? Okay. Which means it used to be going faster. How many can figure that out? Okay. Now, if you go back 6,000 years, this is not a problem. The Earth was spinning a little faster when Adam was here. He wouldn't notice. He didn't have a watch anyway, as far as we know. But some of these guys would like me to believe everything is billions of years old. Ooh, now you go back a few billion years, the Earth was spinning real fast. Your days and nights would be pretty quick. Get up, go to bed, get up, go to bed, get up, go to bed. You'd never get nothing done. Centrifugal force would have been enormous. The winds would have been 5,000 miles an hour from the Coriolis effect. And you think the dinosaurs lived 200 million years ago? Ooh, man, I know what happened to them. They got blown off. No, they did not live 200 million years ago. Sahara Desert has what's called a prevailing wind pattern. The wind almost always blows the same direction. This creates a problem. The hot air coming off the desert kills the trees next door, and that area becomes desert. And once that soil gets sterilized, it's real hard to bring it back. The process is called desertification. They did quite a study on Sahara because they know it's growing about 4 miles a year today. After studying Sahara for a long time, they said, we think that desert's about 4,000 years old. That's pretty old. But I have a question. If the Earth is millions of years old, why don't we have a bigger desert someplace? Why is the biggest desert in the world less than 4,000 years old? Well, I have a theory about that desert. Now, here's my theory. I believe about 6,000 years ago, God made everything. 4,400 years ago, there was a flood. And it's pretty hard to have a desert under a flood. So the desert couldn't start growing until the flood water went down. Psalm 104, the mountains arose, the valleys sank down, the water rushed off. And so I predict, based on the Bible, the biggest desert in the world will be less than 4,400 years old. It is. Wow. Maybe the Bible's right. Did you know when they drill into the ground, sometimes they hit oil? The oil often is under incredible pressure, up to 20,000 pounds per square inch. It'll come squirting up out of the ground, like a big zip. 20,000 psi. The guys who studied the rocks on top of the oil say the pressure of the oil is greater than the weight of overbearing rock, which really creates a problem. It should have cracked the rock in less than 10,000 years. Okay, well then I have a question. If the Earth is millions of years old, why is the oil pressure down there still? And where did the oil come from anyway? Well, nearly all scientists agree that oil comes from organisms that are squished. They're changed by heat and pressure into oil. Years ago, they learned how to make a barrel of oil in 20 minutes in the laboratory from a ton of garbage. They learned that 30 years ago. In Australia, they're taking sewage sludge and changing it to oil in 30 minutes. Sinclair has the dinosaur as their logo. They say the dinosaurs turned to oil. Yes, boys and girls, it mellowed for 80 million years. I don't think so. I have a theory about the oil. Now, here's my theory. I believe about 6,000 years ago, God made everything. 4,400 years ago, there was a flood. Now, in that flood, lots of critters and people drowned. They got buried by the gravel and the rocks and the mud and the sand. It got pretty heavy on top, and it squished them into oil. So the oil's down there from the people and animals that drowned in the flood. Which means, if you stop and think about that, you drove over here today on some of your ancestors. Next time you're at the gas station pumping them in there, you can say, bye, Grandpa. You should have listened to Noah. He told you it was going to rain. It did too, didn't it? I was preaching in Denver one time, and some guys came to the meeting, and they said, now, Hovind, we know you teach the Earth is 6,000 years old. We'd like to prove to you you're wrong. Come with us, please. They took me to the Denver National Ice Core Laboratory. They've got this freezer, huge freezer, about the size of this auditorium. We walked in there, 36 below zero. I got Florida blood, folks. That was cold. I know for you that's summertime, 36 below. The Wisconsinites. We walked in there, and they said, Mr. Hovind, we go to the South Pole and to Greenland, and we drill holes through the ice. And we save the middle part of the hole. Has to be a government job, you know. And saving ice holes, yeah. We can drill these holes down in the ground, and we save the core sample in this freezer. We'd like you to see these core samples. I said, oh, that'd be very interesting. I walked in the freezer. They showed me these core samples, and they said, Hovind, you see these rings on here? I said, yep, I see them. You can see them very clearly. They said, what happens in the summer, the snow melts a little bit, and then it refreezes and makes clear ice. But in the winter, the snow packs, and it traps the air bubbles, and it makes white ice. So these rings, clear, it sure shows up dark here, you know, dark, light, represent summer, winter, summer, winter, summer, winter. They said, now the deepest hole we ever drilled is 10,000 feet. And you can count the rings, 135,000 of the annual rings. Now why do you go around teaching people the earth is only 6,000 years old? I said, fellas, aren't you assuming those are annual rings? So they didn't know about the Lost Squadron apparently, but some airplanes ran out of gas during World War II. It hit a storm, had turned back. They crash landed in Greenland. A rich guy from Kentucky got a brilliant idea to go get those airplanes off the ice. How many have ever heard of the Lost Squadron before? In 1990, they went looking for those airplanes. They found them using ground-penetrating radar because they were 263 feet below the surface since World War II. They found them, used a radar machine, and they located a P-38, and they melted a hole down to get to it. As they melted the hole down, got down deeper and deeper, and they finally hit the airplane, melted a big hole, and took the airplane apart, and brought the pieces up through the hole, took them all back to Middleborough, Kentucky, and put it together. It finally flew in the fall of 2002, I believe, was the first time it flew again. The P-38 from World War II. I talked to the guy who dug out the airplane. His name is Bob Carden. I said, now, Bob, that airplane was in the ground for 48 years. It was 263 feet down. That's 5.5 feet a year. The deepest hole the guy's ever drilled looking for ice cores is 10,000 feet. You divide that by 5.5, you get 1,800 years. What happened to the 135,000? Now, I know deeper layers get squished. They turn to glacial firn, okay? So really 44, like the Bible says, 4,400 years, that's plenty of time to account for the ice. So I went and met Bob, talked to him. There's his phone number if you don't believe me. I said, Bob, you dug the airplane out, is that right? He said, yes, sir. There was a crew of us, but I was on that crew. I said, Bob, when you melted down to get to the airplane, did you melt through ice rings? He said, oh, yeah, there were many hundreds of them. I said, wait a minute. How do you get hundreds of annual rings in 48 years? Looks to me like there should be 48 of them. He said, oh, no, there were hundreds. See, those aren't annual rings, folks. Those rings represent, they don't represent summer, winter, summer, winter. It represents warm, cold, warm, cold, warm, cold. You can get 5 of those in one day around here, can't you? Yeah. But here's a guy from Scientific American still calling them annual rings. Now, either he's ignorant or he's a liar. I hope he's just ignorant, because ignorance can be fixed. Stupid is forever. By the way, that's the difference.